Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so welcome to today's answer writing enrichment session. Before starting, I'll just ask the online students if I'm audible. Please confirm if I'm audible. YouTube. Okay. So I just want to start off by asking how many of you have actually done answer writing before this for GS 1, 2, 3, 4? No? Okay. So let me start off by debusting or debunking a few myths about answer writing. In ethics, when we read ethics, they say that ethics is nothing but a test of your personality, right? The problem arises when this personality is tested in 7 minutes, that too in an exam environment, right? So, what we'll be focusing on is how to develop the structures to write ethics in a timely manner. Yes, it is a test of our personality, but that personality has to be put forth, has to be showcased in a set of some 7 minutes, right, to each question. So, we'll try to strategize accordingly, right? Okay. Now, what are the prerequisites to writing a good answer? First is conceptual clarity. How many of you have read ethics before this? Good. Okay. Now, when you read ethics, you have to understand and analyze that you do not just have, basic definitions. Earlier, they used to say that if you know the definitions to these keywords that are there in your syllabus, you're good to go, right? That you can write a good answer. That is no more the case. If you see the questions that they're asking now, they are 4 lines long, 5 lines long questions, right? So, first is that only definitions, only having a good personality, sadly, does not equal to a good score in ethics, right? Okay, now if this is not enough, then what is required? First is clarity in differentiating similar terms. When you read similar terms like non-partisanship and impartiality, what is the difference between those two terms, right? What is the difference between sympathy, empathy, compassion, right? What is sympathy? Anyone? Difference between sympathy and empathy? Anybody online?
When you put in place of other,
Okay, and then what is empathy?
try to analyze what problem they are facing.
No. Sympathy is feeling bad or pity for someone. Empathy is putting yourself in others' shoes and feeling their pain. Compassion is be motivated enough by their pain to do something to alleviate their suffering, right? So when we read ethics like this, the basic is that at least you have to understand what are the basics and are your basics correct? What is the difference between impartiality and non-partisanship? Are you using them interchangeably because you do not have good understanding of ethics, right? So the first thing is that. Second is developing critical thinking. That is, for example, if I'm reading the syllabus, if I'm reading the syllabus, I don't just read syllabus from a passive perspective. I have to develop a critical perspective on all these themes. For example, a simple topic for those who haven't read ethics as of now, how do they understand ethics? One topic is role of family in inculcation of values. Now, how do we read this? Role of family mein you break down the question into simply what is the role of father, what is the role of mother, what is the role of siblings, grandparents, etc. Simply we learn that father teaches us discipline, mother teaches us selflessness, then your siblings teach you some basic values as well. But you have to understand that this is not where UPSC stops while asking you a question. They ask you more things like how is the role of a father transitioning? How is the nature of Indian families transitioning? The transition in values, right? So when you're reading the role of family, you have to not just read it from a passive perspective but also inculcate the critical perspective, the change in dynamics, that what is the role of technology doing in changing how we view parenting. Have you heard this term called iPad parenting? iPad parenting? What is iPad parenting? Technology as a substitute to what values your grandparents, your parents were giving you earlier. Now imagine a random influencer on YouTube teaching your child what values will they imbibe, right? That. Then what happens earlier, if you met an accident, you were fearful of how will your father react. Instead of thinking of how much pain you were in more in fear of how would your father react. So, example of authoritarian parenting versus you contrast it with today's parents. We are turning more democratic. We are moving towards where a child has more say in what kind of what stream is he interested in, what fields is he interested in, what kind of lessons does he want to take, right? Other thing that you see in role of family, what is the transition, what are the other transitions, anybody online that you think is family transitioning into? First is from authoritarian to more democratic. Second is nuclearization of families, are we seeing? Because of, as a result of globalization, when parents are moving to cities in search of jobs, what is it leading to? Nuclearization. Now naturally, when you grow up in a joint family, you learn what? Cooperation. You learn what? Mutual coexistence. But when you grow up in a nuclear family, what do you learn? Individualism, isolation, right? You no more have grandparents to tell you where your culture has evolved, how your culture has evolved. For example, I am a Sindhi, and my grandparents used to tell me stories of partition, how when they came to this country they had nothing but few clothes, and now whatever they have built out of their hard work, right? So that is how you have to read topics, not just see them as dead topics, but put life into them, into seeing how they are transitioning into newer concepts, right? Now take other example, say for example attitude. Now if you read attitude as it is, you will learn a definition of attitude that every student who has ever read the topic of attitude will write. Attitude is a learned predisposition of a person in a certain circumstance, right? Will an examiner who is reading 10 copies one after the other find it interesting to read attitude in this manner? No. How do you have to write attitude? How do you have to analyze attitude? What topics is UPSC linking attitude with? That you have to understand. For example, what is the right kind of an attitude for a citizen? What is the right kind of attitude required of a civil servant? When he faces a situations like say resource crunch in a district, what attitude will make him overcome that problem? Say for example, attitude versus aptitude. Aptitude is what? The skill sets that you are born with. You can of course nourish them and make them better. For example, Michael Phelps, how many of you know him? Right, he was born with a aptitude for swimming, right? Then attitude versus aptitude, right? That is where you learn that what is more important. Is attitude more important or is aptitude more important? Tomorrow if a person with great skill set comes to you, should you give him that job or should you give somebody who has good positive attitude or positive values? Should you give him that job, right? A person with good aptitude but without the right attitude, right values, will always be an asset to the administration? No, a liability to the administration, because whenever he gets a chance, he will use them to his benefits, personal benefit, right? So that is how you have to learn different topics. How does UPSC ask questions when you learn these topics, right? For example, civil services values. What are the values required of a civil servant? Impartiality, non-partisanship. What is non-partisanship? That he does not favor any political party, any political ideologies. He's there to serve the people via the government, right? That. So this is what you have to learn, and this is how you have to break down the syllabus when you're learning ethics, right? Third thing that you require to write a good answer in ethics. Now you understood the role of family, you understood the role of, say, attitude, the role of aptitude in a good civil servant. But when you write an answer and everybody next to you has a basic understanding of ethics, कि attitude क्या होता है, aptitude क्या होता है, probity क्या होता है, they know all this. You know what is integrity, you know what is aptitude, but that is not enough. What you have to do away from that is inculcate value addition. जब आप ethics में case studies लिखते हो, it is not important to only tell what is the correct option. Is it only necessary to tell what is the correct option? It is also important to tell कि आपकी क्या ethical thinking है जो आपको ये action लेने के लिए मजबूर कर रही है. That will be the role of your ethical philosophies, ethical theories, ethical thinkers, right? What is it? Philosophy. What is the philosophy? Are you thinking by Kantian deontology? Are you thinking by teleology? Are you thinking by Aristotle's virtue ethics? Are you thinking from Gandhian talisman? What is the perspective that you're applying to actually reach to this conclusion? जो आपने डिसीजन लिया, आपने किस बेसिस पे लिया? What is the ethical thinking behind that decision? That is very important to be told, right? Then another thing that UPSC has given itself before it even starts out to tell you what the syllabus is, that this paper will include questions to test the candidate's attitude and approach to issues relating to integrity, probity in public life, and problem solving approach to various issues and conflicts. Right? Your approach and your attitude in solving problems. How are we reading ethics as? Definitions. Definitions don't tell what is your attitude. So this is the only paper where you get to showcase your real personality. That, okay, I am a person of positive attitude, I am somebody of integrity, and when in a case study there is a close call between the right and the wrong option, I will any day stand by the right option, come what may. That showcases what? You as a person of integrity. Okay? So whatever you write in this, it has always to reflect your perspective, your standing in a situation, and not your definition that you've learned from a book. Now, if you see, and has anybody written mains so far here? Okay. What was your score in ethics, if I can ask? Yes. Now, the reason that why we are stuck in that range of 95 to 110 in ethics is largely because we are not able to showcase our personalized understanding of ethics to the examiner. For example, last year there was a ranker, Shobhika Pathak, and in a podcast, she told me that during studying for mains, while I was studying for mains, I ordered something from, say, Swiggy, because it was late at night and I was craving something, right? And the order got delivered, and while it was raining, the person had to come in his discomfort to deliver me an order because he is not as privileged as I am. And I wrote it as an example of ethics. So when you read it like that, when you live your ethics, when you whatever you observe around you, when you put that in your paper, when you show that perspective, see, everyone can write the 10-minute delivery apps as unethical. But when you show it as a personalized example, that I recognized that I committed this mistake of asking somebody during a rain to come deliver to me because I am in that position, is not something that all of us will write, right? So trying to develop that understanding and trying to showcase that understanding of ethics, कि आप ethics को एक philosophical subject की तरह नहीं, एक live demonstration of ethics की तरह दिखाते हो. What is ethical, what is unethical. Now, say for example, take an example of other issues like the Epstein files. How many of you are aware of Epstein files? Yes. Now, if you see, all the powerful leaders of the world, all the powerful capitalists of the world, all the powerful businessmen of the world are indulged in this. Why do you think was it necessary? We consider materialism as happiness. In today's world, if I have a good job, I will consider that I'm happy. If I have good, say for example, shoes, good clothes, good gadgets, I'll consider myself as happy. These people have access to all those, right? The best of the resources, the best of power in a society. Then why do you think they had to go on to this extent to commit something? Because materialism cannot fill the ethical void that is there in you, right? Materialism can only give you a semblance of filling that ethical void. Okay, जो happiness, जो true happiness, do you think that these people having the best of resources can ever be as happy as, say, Mother Teresa? The happiness that she got, Aristotle gives a very important concept of eudaimonia. And you can contrast it with happiness as we see in today's world. These people with material resources, with the best of power in society, we call them as happy. But when crimes like this come to the forefront, when issues like these come to the forefront, you realize how empty people are on the inside, even if they have access to everything in their personal lives. Okay? So, eudaimonia is nothing but a virtuous life. Say, for example, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, he was first a scientist, then he went on to become the president. Then he died teaching at IIM Shillong. Right? That was a life he lived as per the best of his mental and physical faculties. Okay? So you have to understand and differentiate between these things. That how do we see life as, what is the actual life as, and I'll also ask you to brainstorm a few questions after this so that you also develop that thinking in answer writing, right? So again, the point being that the examiner is testing your attitude and your approach in these answers and not a random definition that some other author has written. Now, that does not mean that we will not read the basic definitions that are there. Of course, we have to read the basic definitions that are there. But in examples, in the introductions that we write, we have to also showcase our own personality, our own understanding of these issues. Right? Okay. Other thing, so the paper of ethics consists of two parts. The first part A consists of your 10 markers. All of you are aware of this, right? And your part B consists of case studies. What are case studies? Case studies are nothing but certain issues or certain themes on which in which these issues are asked to you in detail, right? Suppose you are confused between two ethical dilemmas, right? Which one do you choose? That is nothing but a case study. So case studies on above issues. What happens when there is corruption happening in front of you? What do you decide? Do you choose to stand with the right, or do you choose to safeguard your job, right? So that issues on, say, women related issues like discrimination, patriarchy in the family, caste based discrimination. What do you do when you're dealing with that as a civil servant? How do you react to these situations? What is the ethical decision that you make in these circumstances, and what is the philosophical, theoretical, ethical basis जिसके बेसिस पे आप वो डिसीजन लोगे? ठीक है? Now let me quickly tell you the kind of questions that you are asked in case studies. First is, let us read a case study. Okay, let me first quickly tell you the kind of questions that are asked in a case study. First is, they used to ask earlier, now it is no more directly asked, which is the stakeholders. Basically, if there is corruption happening, who all are going to be affected by this decision? So you tell that, okay, the district magistrate, whoever is in charge, the subordinates, the superiors, the citizens, right? Now in here as well, you have to innovate. For example, when you're writing a case study where the environment is being polluted, suppose a river is being polluted in carrying forward any developmental project, what will I write as a stakeholder? River as a living entity. When there's a decision that is being taken against the refugees of a country, and when you're not putting them on an equal basis with a citizen, what is being hampered? Humanitarianism. Humanity as a whole is being degrading. That is actually seeing what is happening to fellow humans. So humanity as a stakeholder in these situations, right? So stakeholders. Next thing that you are asked is, what are the ethical issues and ethical dilemmas that exist in this situation? What are the ethical issues and ethical dilemmas, right? Third thing that you're asked is, what are the options available to you options available in the sense that now there is a case study related to corruption. If you expose the corruption, your job, your life is at stake, right? If you do not expose corruption, your job remains safe, right? Your life is safe. What option will you then go for? Will you stay neutral? Do not say anything when there is corruption happening? Will you speak up even when you know that you require a job to sustain your family? You require a job that you've gotten with so much effort? Or will you then side with corruption? And what is the ethical basis, ethical theory, ethical values that will motivate you to do that action? Right? Is this clear? Fourth very important subpart is the course of action. And in these options and course of action, you have to also tell that why did you go for the action that you did. For example, let us look at this case study. You are working as an executive in a nationalized bank for several years, right? One day, one of your close colleagues tells you that her father is suffering from a heart disease and needs surgery immediately to survive. She also tells you that the operation will cost about 10 lakhs. You are aware of the fact that her husband is no more and she is from a lower middle class family. You are empathetic about her situation. However, apart from expressing sympathy, you do not have the resources to fund her. Right? First step says that, okay, you are consoling the other person. You know the situation where they're coming from. You know that they have certain drawbacks and they won't be able to finance this themselves. But you're also aware that you personally do not have the resources to go on and help her. Right? A few weeks later, you ask her about the well-being of her father, and she informs you that his successful surgery and that he's recovering. Right? That is the good news. But then she confides in you that the bank manager was kind enough to facilitate the release of rupees 10 lakhs from a dormant account of someone to pay for the operation with the promise of you paying later, right? She has already started paying it back and will continue to do so until it is all returned, right? Did you understand the case study? That this is the circumstance that she is in. Her father requires an urgent surgery, right? Now you do not have the resources to help her out personally, but as a friend, later on when you ask her, is your father okay, she confides in you that I was helped in a wrong manner by the manager, right? That she released the funds that were in a dormant account in a bank, right? Now tell me, what will you do in such a situation and why? How many of you will actually go on to whistleblow what is being done? And how many of you will say that, okay, this is the right action, it actually ended up saving a life? How many of you will say that it ended up saving a life, so it is a good act? And if not, why? Yes. I'll tell you.
There cannot be a right means to go for it.
Have you heard of this theory, deontology? Yes. What does deontology say? Means over ends. And universality of an action. What does this mean? That act in a manner that it can act as a universal dictum. Today, if I use that money from the bank for my private use, irrespective of how much important it was, tomorrow, if everyone starts doing the same, using money from the private account to buy a car, to use for any personal gain, say for example, having to do sisters marriage, say for example, now that is a legitimate issue, they're using it for. So Kant says that what if everybody starts doing the same thing, will you then also stand by that action? So act according to that maxim that can be universalized, that can be universally applicable. So tomorrow, if I lie to save somebody's life, right? There is a riot and you are looking after some criminal, right? If I lie for once, and if everybody tomorrow, if you start lying, you start lying, you start lying, what will the society become? Will there be any trust left in the society? So he says that act as per a dictum that can be universally applicable. So while what he did was in good faith, with good intentions, with good motivation, but Kant says that you cannot act wrong even one time if you cannot replicate it every time an action is being done. Okay? So that is how. So when you understand, when you write ethics, you have to do it in such a manner that you're able to justify the action. Okay? No answer is wrong in ethics, but whatever you're choosing in these situations, at least you have to showcase why you are choosing such an action.
Will it not be affected by the seriousness of the issue?
Seriousness of which issue? See, again, you can ask some of your personal friends to help her. You can crowd fund to help her. But this method of helping her is wrong, right? When you are saying that you can use the public resources, that resources do not belong to the manager. Manager is what? Managing those resources. He's not the owner of those resources. You can always crowd fund. You can always come up with better. You can tell other employees and contribute, say, 1 lakh each to the betterment of the surgery of the father, right? So there are better ways of doing that ethical act. And even then, in case studies, what you're also required to do is also be innovative in your solutions. Right? For example, if there is an issue of child marriages in a district or problem of dowry in a district, right? What will you do about it? Law already exists, it is already illegal. Even then, these things are happening. Why? Because there is social acceptance for these things. There is social acceptance for these things. So, in the long term, will making a stringent law for something that is socially acceptable make any bring change, make any long term change in society? No. What you have to do is, in the long term, change the value system, change their perspective on these issues, seeing women as a burden, right? Educate her, empower her, right? So this is what you have to understand. This is where you have to bring in. Then you can, of course, go on to mention the initiatives that the government is taking to educate the girl child, that the certain civil servants have taken to educate the girl child, to bring down the dowry cases and dowry deaths, right? This is what we have to learn and how to understand to do, right? Then coming to value addition. One thing that I told you is that of personalized examples, that whatever you realize in a society, in your personal experiences, that we took the example of Blinkit or the Swiggy delivery, right? Example of you as an aspirant. For example, you have to write a question on an unexamined life is not worth living. This is a quote by yes. Socrates. An unexamined life is not worth living. What are the values that this quote is talking about? Can you tell? What are the values that this quote is talking about? An unexamined life is not worth living. It is talking about self reflection, right? It is talking about introspection, ability to correct oneself, looking for flaws and correcting them. So now, when you write an example to this question, can one of the examples be about your journey as an aspirant, and how, if you want to say improve an answer, you will have to first sit with that answer and self reflect on what you did wrong, what you did right. If you could not clear, say, an attempt, a prelims, you have to sit with your mistakes. You cannot just hit in the blind, shoot in the blind. It will result in consecutive failures. So unless you do not sit and introspect what you are doing correctly and what you are doing wrong, you won't be able to understand where the improvement lies. So this, then again, you can link it with various societal ills as well. Can we link it with judicial review? That time and again, even judiciary corrects its own decisions as well, right? So you can link it with this as well. So you have to understand that ethics is not some basic theoretical philosophical subject. It is a more practical subject. It is a more understanding of your own principles, understanding of how you would react in a situation, and what is the ethical basis of you reacting in a situation. Okay? Then development of certain ethical vocabularies. For example, eudaimonia, phronesis. Phronesis is nothing but practical wisdom. What is practical wisdom? Knowing when to act as per which virtue. Okay? When you're in a practical situation, should you be saving somebody's life by lying, or should you in that case as well speak truth? If you have to lie to save somebody's life, or if you speak the truth, they will be killed, what will you do? Suppose there's a terrorist and they're asking you for a lead, for help. Should you then lie to save your countrymen, or should you then speak truth and not care about the consequences? What should you do? I should lie, but Kant says lying is wrong. Universality principle. So Aristotle talks about A practical wisdom, knowing which virtue is right in which circumstance. Lying is right in this circumstance, right? That. Then other keywords like ethical fade, moral muteness, where you realize that something wrong is being committed, but you're mute to it, right? Say a fight, somebody being eve teased in the streets, but you remain mute. Why? Because your ethics has remained mute. Then keyword example linkages. Whatever keywords you read from the syllabus, you have to draw different examples from that to be writing a good answer in ethics, right? Now I would want you to write a few questions after this. Let me take this up quickly. First thing is answering the core and non-core demand of the question, right? How many are aware of what is the core demand to a question and what is the non-core demand of a question? Anyone? The current society is plagued with widespread trust deficit. What are the consequences of this situation for personal well-being and for societal well-being? First subpart. What can you do at the personal level to make yourself trustworthy? Second subpart. Now, when the question has direct question marks, why is the first statement put there? Just to add a statement? No. What is it for? To create a context to the question. So more marks are allotted to you for writing these two subparts, right? But you also have to briefly substantiate what this demand of the question means. So core demand is what is directly asked of you as in the question. What is the non-core demand? Something that is not directly asked. For example, this statement, but if you answer this statement, if you substantiate on this statement, what does it do? Think of it. अगर आप किसी core demand को लिखने से पहले अगर आप non-core demand, the current society is plagued with widespread trust deficits, what are the consequences? And then what can you do at the personal level to solve this? So when you answer this first, what are you actually doing? Setting the stage, agreeing with the examiner that this question is talking in the right context. The current society is plagued with widespread trust deficit. Can you substantiate? कहाँ दिखता है आपको trust deficit current society में? Intolerance reflected in mob lynching. Second, deep fakes. When you link it with social media, cyber frauds, widespread inequality in the economic sphere. What am I doing? Just breaking it down in pestle, thinking of it in political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal terms. Right? This is what will help you to tell the examiner that yes, you agree and you also understand that how the present society is faced with or plagued with a trust deficit, right? This is what you do. So when you write the non-core demand first, what are you actually doing? Setting a context. जब आप बताओगे नहीं, for example, suppose this question was about a scheme, that what are the positives and negatives of a certain scheme. Unless you do not briefly tell the examiner what is the scheme, how will you tell what are the positives and negatives? right? So briefly, it demands that you tell the examiner what is the scheme, roughly in 3-4 lines, what are the features of the scheme, and then you go on to tell the positives and negatives. Similarly, that is what you're doing in GS4. Okay? The current society is plagued with widespread trust deficit. What are the consequences of the situation? First, consequences तो तभी बताओगे जब आप बताओगे कि हाँ ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट है. कैसे दिखता है? डीप फेक्स में दिखता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल साइबर फ्रॉड्स में दिखता है, right? So when you write like this, you actually go closer to attempting the demand of the question better. Okay? So this was about addressing the core and non-core demand. Now, this you have to address briefly. Why briefly? Because more marks will be assigned to you if you write the core demand of the question. Easy, right? So this will come later. First, you have to focus on these demands, but you also do not have to miss out on the non-core demand, right? Then introduction. What is the idea of introduction? How should you introduce a question? For example, if a question asks you, integrity is an important virtue for a civil servant. Randomly, just a simple understanding. Integrity is an important virtue for a civil servant. Now, how should I introduce this question? Anyone? Anyone online? How should I introduce this question?
We have to define what is integrity.
Okay, good. Firstly, you have to define what is integrity. What else? Plus, also? No. When you are writing this question, there are two components in this question. What is it? First is integrity, and why is it important for a civil servant? So when you write an introduction, you have to make sure that even if the examiner has come directly to my answer without even reading the question, he also understands and gets the gist of what the question must be. चाहे उसने question नहीं पढ़ा हो, he should be able to tell what is the question by reading your introduction. Is it clear? Suppose this, I tell first what is integrity using a quote or using a definition. Plus, I should also write why is integrity an important virtue for a civil servant. It is important because of the resources that are placed under him, because of the widespread powers that are under him, right? That makes important the virtue of integrity in a civil servant. Okay? So, understand that you have to address both the demands of the question directly in the introduction. What if I just write about integrity? If the examiner is not read, he will feel that where did I ask about role of civil services and why is integrity an important virtue? When you write like this in the introduction itself, you are telling that I know you have asked what is integrity, and here itself I'm telling you why is integrity important for a civil servant. Is it clear? Okay. Now, this was an example of it that we just discussed. Different ways to introduce an answer. One way is simply writing a definition. The problem with definition approach is that it is the minimum that you can do to write an answer in ethics. But if you do minimum, you score minimum, right? So we have to go beyond these methods and do better. Say code-based introduction. We'll only discuss a few today, right? Because of paucity of time. One is your introduction using a quote based introduction. Say, for example, if I'm writing a quote on integrity. Second way is a recent context. Now, there are two ways of a recent context. One is that I mention of a recent incidents. Second is current oriented introduction, which means current oriented. How do we talk about current? No. What else? Any other idea of what is a recent incidents based meaning? News based. That one specific news from the, just for example, we discussed Epstein files, we discussed the delivery partners strikes, right? That forms a specific incidents. For example, we saw this Lamborghini crash. We discuss about, we start your answer with that. Now, that is one way. Other way is current oriented. What is current oriented? The current situation of society. Have you heard how two uncles in the metro speak to each other about the scenario of the country? Right? कि सब खराब है ना? Everything is in doom. Right? So when, as in with respect to the question, that is how you write a current oriented introduction. That you're not pinpointing this issue as well, but you're talking about a general scenario कि trust deficit है तो वो कहाँ दिखता है in the introduction, right? These are the two ways that we'll discuss today. So let me discuss this first. Recent context. Now in the recent context, please make sure, and this is only for introduction, when you're introducing using a recent context, it should not be a micro example. Micro example matlab, I know that some people are very fond of reading their hometown का local newspaper का one page कि क्या चल रहा है उनके शहर में या उनके town में. But then when you write an example from that, will the examiner possibly know that? No. So writing a micro example in your introduction actually will puzzle the examiner as to why is he writing this here. I have no clue. So it has to be recent and it has to be major. Recent why? Now can I write example of Chandrayaan 3 as an introduction in a question? Can I write? How many of you say yes? कब हुआ था take off Chandrayaan 3? 23? 23? I think 23.
Yes.
Now something that happened in 23, you can of course use it as an example in your answer. But if you're starting with something that happened 3 years back, what will the examiner think? कि Chandrayaan 3 क्यों उड़ा रहा है यहाँ पे? ना? तो you have to think of recent. जैसे अभी के टाइम पे अगर मैं recent बोलूँ, what are the 3-4 news incidents? Galgotia's incident, yes. What else? Epstein files we can use. Something that has happened in the last 1, 2, 3 months. Mains जब आप लिख रहे होगे, जब उसके 2-3 महीने आसपास में जो बड़े मेजर न्यूज हैं, some crimes, something on the border issues, something of internal security, some war, some operation that has happened, that you can write about. But अगर आप चंद्रयान 3 पे ले जा रहे हो एग्जामिनर को, it would not make sense to him. That why is he telling me about all this right now when I'm asking a simple question? Okay, so it has to be recent and it has to be major. Major why? Not from your local newspaper, right? And major that something no one in the society should have missed. So that आपको ultimately लिखना क्यों है? वो ultimately आपको, you have to establish a connection with the examiner that what am I trying to convey with this example. And if it is a minor news that you read in the corner of a newspaper, just came once, he might have missed it. Even if you read it, he must have forgotten it. Why do you want to take that risk? So a macro news, right? Take this example. The current society is plagued with widespread trust deficit. What are the consequences of this situation for personal well-being and for societal well-being? Current society, question कैसे पूछा गया है? Does this question have a current tone to it? The question has a current tone to it. Now imagine if I start by Gandhian philosophy or something. Will it fit? No. You have to understand the tone with which the examiner wants to talk to you about the question. The current society is plagued with widespread trust deficit. Now think of it as some metro uncles सीखे आजकल तो किसी पे भरोसा ही नहीं करना चाहिए. Then you answer in a similar context कि सही बातें नहीं करना चाहिए because deepfakes, digital arrest, instances of misutilization of public funds, corruption and everything. That is how they talk, right? These are the instances that show us that there is widespread trust deficit in society. So the question was oriented like that. When you see a question like this, you should imagine two metro uncles talking, right? And that is how you answer this. Okay? Then other is your code based. How many of you have seen toppers copies for GS1 or GS2 or GS3 or GS4? Good. Now, when you see toppers copies, you realize that इन लोग को तो सब आता है. सारे questions में they start with a quote, they start with a Sanskrit shloka, and they know where to put which Sanskrit shloka, which quote, which recent incidents. That is not the case. When you go back to your syllabus, there are certain values that are mentioned. In ethics and human interface, human values, role of family, society, educational institutions. What did the topper do? They picked up one educational institution as a key theme. They prepared one quote on it, role of teacher. In Sanskrit, they picked up a shlok on it. Attitude, another value. They picked up two quotes on it. They picked up a Sanskrit shloka on it. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. Whatever you think, so you become. Emotional intelligence, aptitude. Then you have these values mentioned in the syllabus: integrity, impartiality, non-partisanship, objectivity, dedication to public service, empathy, tolerance, compassion towards the weaker section. Even weaker section is a theme. If you see, many of your case studies, many of your questions, compassion related case studies will be linked to weaker sections. Why not? What are the weaker sections? Vulnerable sections: women, children, the poor. Now, if you prepare a quote related to these themes, Yatha naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devta, Sanskrit shloka. Women, wherever women are worshipped, there the gods reside. Now, do you think of topper as some intellectual person you cannot match? No, it is just a result of good preparation, right? So, this is something that they had with themselves. This is what you will always have with you. This should form the basis of your practice and understanding of ethics, right? Now coming back to the other template of code-based questions. Now things that you have to keep in mind when you're introducing using a quote is that suppose the question is talking about integrity. Now what are you substituting a quote for? A definition? आप quote को definition की जगह लिख रहे हो integrity की. Now what do you have to make sure when you're doing that? कि quote ऐसा होना चाहिए जो थोड़ा meaning समझा दे integrity का. For example, your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. Or if I write, attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference. Is that quote telling anything about attitude? Attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference. But attitude है क्या, वो एग्जामिनर पे छोड़ दो, अब खुद समझो. नहीं, right? You have to actually go closer to the meaning of the value when you're writing the quote. Understood?
Yes.
The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. What is this a quote for? What is the underlying value in this quote? Selfless service. तो सेल्फलेसनेस के लिए मैं ये कोट यूज कर सकती हूँ, राइट? सो इट शुड एक्सप्रेस द meaning of the value. Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. These kind of things will be suitable for conclusion after you've written an entire answer on attitude and aptitude. But अगर आप introduction में बोल रहे हो attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference, you're actually puzzling the examiner. So you have to inculcate these things, but with a certain intelligence. Okay? Where to exactly use it in the introduction, in the body. Now in the main body, whoever has gone through Topper's copies will know that you have to write an argument, but also substantiate it, okay, with an example, or you have to substantiate using some theories, using some quote, using some values, personalized examples. Some mythological examples, etc. You have to build at least 2 subparts to a question. Now understand why am I saying this? That even if the question is asking you about only one demand, integrity is a value that empowers the human being, justify with suitable illustrations. It is only asking about one thing, integrity, and how it empowers the human being. But why should you build at least 2 subparts? Anyone? If you write at least, you are supposed to write at least 8 to 10 points in an answer. Now, can you write 8 to 10 points of equal quality to explain this answer, this one subpart of the question? No. If you do that, you will degrade your answer after every point. At best, you will know 5 points about this. At best, you will know 6 points. Uske beyond, you will not be able to write anything without repeating or without reducing the quality or depleting the quality of the point that you're writing. So what you do instead is create a second subpart. What can I say as a second subpart? Integrity is a value that empowers the human being. इसमें मैं second subpart ये बता सकती हूँ, values, how to inculcate the value of integrity, right? क्योंकि इतना importance अगर पता ही है तो examiner को ये भी जानना होगा कि कैसे inculcate करनी चाहिए ये values as a non-core demand. So what I do is I spend 5-6 points to write the first sub point. The rest 3 points to 4 points I will explain the non-core demand, which is measures to inculcate integrity. Okay? So in any question, wherever there are 2 subparts or 3 subparts, that is good enough. वहां पे तो करना ही है. But if there is only one demand of the question, there you have to create another sub demand, right? Then in conclusions, let us discuss a few templates of how to conclude an answer. What ought to be? Ethics is usually what? Normative. क्या बताती है वो? फ्यूचरिस्टिक, कि आपको कैसा होना चाहिए, आप कैसे हो. If I am dishonest today, it would want me to become honest. It would want me to become a more better individual. So what ought to be, as in what kind of values or what kind of philosophies, what kind of virtues should I imbibe? Okay. Then you can link the conclusions in ethics with some constitutional principles. Why? Because the constitution is based on certain values itself. Say, for example, if you are talking about environmental ethics, you can link it with DPSPs. You can link it with fundamental rights, fundamental duties, right? So you can connect it with your constitutional principles, constitutional values. Okay. Then larger philosophical principles and theories. Say, for example, if it is talking about roughly, if a question is on social media, or say if a question is on regulation of any technology, what should be the way forward? Should we completely regulate it, or should we completely leave it on its own, have its own progress, have its own way? So you will suggest like a madhyam marga, you will suggest a golden mean. Just giving you a very general example, right? So these are some of the ways that you can conclude your answers. Now we'll write some 3 questions in a time-based manner, right? You'll get 21 minutes and let's write 3 questions. Just brainstorm these 3 questions and let us discuss from whatever we have learned right now. Let us try to apply whatever we've learned, right? Please get ready with your notebooks. Okay. Should we start? Okay. Please start writing. Okay, brainstorm one more question and then we'll discuss these two, right? This question. Take 5 minutes and brainstorm, just write the rough points and structures that you would answer this question in, and then we'll discuss. Okay, let us discuss these two questions, right? First was, in law, a man is guilty when he violates the rights of others. In ethics, he is guilty if he only thinks of doing so. What is the meaning of this question? Why in law you are guilty only if you violate others or violate the rights of others? And in ethics, you're guilty already, even when you've not committed the crime. Why is that?
Regulation which need to be violated, then take the punishment.
Okay. Okay, one thing that you're saying is correct, that law is reactive. Unless you have not committed a crime, you will not be guilty. But ethics works on a higher principle. लॉ क्या स्टैब्लिश करना चाहता है? द बेयर मिनिमम स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑफ एथिक्स इन सोसाइटी. If you are a law abiding citizen, does it ensure that you're ethical also? If you are a law abiding citizen, does it ensure that you're ethical also? It just ensures that you're not a criminal. But should a society stop at ensuring that nobody commits a crime? No, we have to ensure that we move towards higher principles of ethics, higher conduct in ethics. So, what is it talking about? It's talking about the external and bare minimum standard of ethics that laws seek to establish. Whereas in ethics, which is more internal, which is based on the highest standards of human conduct. So this will become your answer. The first subpart will be why in law you are guilty only when you violate the rights of others. Because, say for example, Dowry Prohibition Act. You can be sentenced under it only when you ask for dowry or when you take dowry, right? Murder, when you commit, only then you are sentenced to life or punishment, right? In law, even when there is no actual commitment of the crime, even when you think of doing wrong to someone or thinking of someone in a wrong manner, your conscience will feel guilty. That why did I do this way? Why did I not help someone? Right? Or why did I think of it like that? So law established at a lower standard of ethics. And ethics rules at a higher standard of it. Okay? But both are trying to regulate human behavior. Both are trying to establish an ethical society. Now tell me, one question for you all. Even if a society is ethical, will we require laws or we can get done with laws, get away with laws? Why? Even when a society is ethical, take the example of Japanese society. We see many instances of people standing in queues even when there's a tsunami and there's shortage of water. People will still choose to be in discipline and be in queues, right? That is an ethical society. But do they have laws? Yes. Why? Because ethics is subjective. Which value am I following and which value are you following will always be in conflict. Say, for example, if my friend has committed a crime, right? He has committed corruption. Let us say he's indulged in corruption. Now, will I, as a friend, choose loyalty to him and not tell anyone about that crime? Or will I choose honesty over loyalty to my friend and expose the corruption? Right? Both are ethical ways, both are values. But which value do I choose when? That depends. So, laws are important to establish what? Uniformity. Ethics will exist only when everyone decides that we are ethical from today onwards. Law will at least establish a bare minimum standard of human conduct. And people who are not worthy or not following these bare minimum standards will be put into jails. Why? Because so that the society can operate without chaos. Is it clear? Right? So, what was it talking about? The external, the reactive nature of law versus the higher standards plus the proactive nature of ethics. Is this clear? Is these the lines that you've written this on? Now the examples that you would write to arguments would be when you're writing of law, you can take examples of any laws. Every law will exist only when you violate the right of other person. For example, Environment Protection Act, Dowry Prohibition Act, POSH, anything and everything will exist only if you violate the rights of others. Was this the direction where your answer went? Right? Okay. Then let us discuss how to brainstorm this question. The crisis of ethical values in modern times is traced to a narrow perception of good life. Now, how do I break down this question to answer this question? The crisis of ethical values in modern times is traced to a narrow perception of good life. Narrow perception of good life. If I ask you what is the meaning of good life for you, what will you answer? And don't answer in ethical terms, answer in realistic terms. You will say, politically, I want power for myself. Economically, I want good material means for sustenance. Right? Socially, I want in Indian context belonging to a higher caste. Right? Belonging to a higher status. Be respected in society. Technologically, you want to be empowered technologically. Right? Have the best of resources technologically. Now, is this not a narrow perception of good life as per you? This will give you resources, power, but will it ensure a life of value, a life of virtue, like we discussed Aristotle's eudaimonia, right? True happiness, right? Now, this is what narrow perception of good life: power, fame, money, right? What is a broad perception of good life? This can become your second subpart, or how to create a broader perception, or how to actually lead a good life. What should be the broad perception of a good life? Can you tell?
Values.
Politically, like Gandhi said, there should be politics with principles.
With duties.
That there should be politics with principles. Politics without principles is a sin. So whoever is leading should want to lead so as to bring a real change, a sustainable change in society. Your power, even if you want power, your power should not be power over, which is extractive. It should be power for for empowering others. This power is extractive. You want to misuse others because you have power. Corruption will be a result of this. Power for, you want to empower those who are downtrodden in society, those who are vulnerable in society. Right? Then, if I talk in economic sense, In the economic sense, can I link it with Gandhian trusteeship? That everyone should have basic resources, and whoever has more resources should think of him as trustee and not owner of that wealth. That wealth is not of his own, but it belongs to those who are not at an advantage in the society. Trustees of wealth. What can you link with this as an example in the economic sphere? Can we link this with compassionate capitalism? Can I link this with CSR activities? Tata's contribution during COVID-19, do you remember? What was that an example of? Compassionate capitalism? In the social sense, what is an ideal life? What is a good life in social sense? Harmony, peace and tolerance in society. In technological sense, where rights like informed consent, like privacy, like what else? Freedom of expression, informed consent exist without violating other person's right, where privacy exists. That is a good life. Environmentally, what is a good life? Can you link this with sustainable development? That you are able to cherish the benefits of today's resources without hampering the requirements of future generations. Can I give example of this? How many of you know of mission life? Common but differentiated responsibilities, mission life. We can talk about that. Did you think of this question as broadly as this? No. That is what we're missing out in ethics, right? So this was just a small exercise that I wanted you to do, but I hope the session has been able to help you in developing a clear understanding of what you need to do to write good answers in ethics, right? It is not just clearing or developing a basic understanding of the concepts, it is their application in real life, right? Via templates, via structures, via knowing what are the kind of introductions that you can write. Because if you write monotonous answers, basic definition based answers, what will happen out of that? Similar marks. Most people who write mains are stuck in the range of 90 to 105, 110. And that is the easiest range to score. If you write definitions, I assure you, you will get 100 marks. But beyond that, that is what this will be required for, right? So I hope.
For example, starting with a good life is not mere an animal existence.
Yes.
Recent effects of globalization and socialization inculcation of good life value.
Yes. So, but what I'm trying to tell you is when you write like that, you will not be able to show as many dimensions to the answer that we were able to show. When you speak of good life, जब आप किसी से बात करते हो कि यार life set हो जाए, what do we talk about? We talk about in political terms that you want more power for yourself. You talk about in economic sense, you want more wealth for yourself, you want more material resources for yourself, right? You can always write like that, but you will not be able to explore the different answers, the kind of dimensions that you can create for this answer. Okay, so I hope this brings some inspiration how to develop and inculcate answer writing in ethics. And it is not just a test of your personality. Yes, it is a test of your personality, but to be able to showcase that inculcating multiple dimensions in 7 minutes is another game, right? So I hope you got an introduction to ethics answer writing today, and thank you so much for coming. I hope the session was fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.